Hi everyone, this is Abel. Welcome back to my channel. Today we have a ton of really cool science fiction and fantasy books we have to discuss. We have reading updates, reviews, writing updates. This is going to be great. Let's get ready. But before we start, remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. So if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, leave a like, share this video. Also, you can support the channel by checking out my own epic fantasy novel, The Crimson Fire. If you have read it, please consider leaving a review. If you want to check it out, you have the link in the description down below. Thank you for making this release a huge success for me. During the first 2 weeks from the publication date, we have sold hundreds and hundreds of copies and thousands of pages read on Kindle Unlimited. This is incredible. Thank you for supporting me and for helping me to live a dream, to be actually an author. And yeah, if you want to support the channel, please check it out. Thank you so much. Let's start with something a little bit different. This is a steampunk slash gas lamp story, and I haven't read many of those, which is weird because I consider that kind of aesthetics and settings really interesting. This one is Vallen, the first book in the Cloudbreakers series by Kenton Moore, which has a familiar kick to the story. It says that we have this protagonist, which is called Cole, that lives this very trivial, really boring life, cultivating the fields, and he dreams to be enlisted in the army, to fly in the airships that they use to fight in this never-ending conflict that they have in the current setting of the story. And he's pretty disappointed when somehow abruptly the war ends. So he's not that happy because he wanted to be enlisted to escape the trivial life that he lived, but then the description says that something tragic and incredible happens, and he is thrust into this world of airships, and he basically gets what he wanted, but he discovers that reality is much harder than he ever imagined. So yeah, I like the familiar incipit, the familiar context of the story, the familiar mechanics that we have many times in epic fantasy story, but I'm really curious to see how that works with the aesthetics of gas lamp slash clockwork ticking mechanics and alternate history that we have in that kind of aesthetics. So yeah, steampunks is interesting for me, even if I know so little about it. So if you have any suggestions about really cool, really interesting epic fantasy stories that have a steampunk aesthetics, just let me know. I want to check them out. An epic fantasy story by Dartanyan Johnson. First of all, let me just say this: Dartanyan Johnson is such a perfect author name, and I don't know if it is actually the real name of this person or if he cherry-picked the most badass name and the most badass surname to create this pseudonym, but it sounds so good. So Dartanyan Johnson, he wrote Ashes and Ruble. This is with a subtitle, A Kingdom Casting Shadows. This has a really cool incipit. It is about a prince, Avus. This is oddly written. It is incredibly difficult for me to pronounce. I think it is Avus Fulhik. He is heir to the throne, and he's a wanted man. So the gist of the story is that this man, which is he's the prince. I think he's the prince. He is wanted because they think that he killed his own father. Basically, the whole kingdom is chasing after him to make justice for this heinous crime. And we have a group of strange and maybe unexpected heroes. We have Carissa, we have Clyde, and maybe a couple of others, and they decided to chase after the prince because probably they will gain not just money, but also recognition for this huge feat. But the fact is that Prince Avus he doesn't remember actually doing that. So there's a conspiracy there. But even if he doesn't remember being actually the killer, it looks like a ton of people actually saw him doing it. So there's something strange going on there. So when a story that has epic fantasy vibes with our classic group of races and monsters, because elves get mentioned briefly here, when you have that kind of classic aesthetics with an interesting question, with an interesting mysteries at the basis of the story, it makes it much more interesting for me to get invested in the development of the plot, actual plot, which is not my usual take. I'm usually more interested in characters, but if we have that kind of strange thing going on that we have to figure out with the characters during the story, with an interesting setup and a very well developed payoff at the end of the volume, that makes it chef kiss for me. So I'm really intrigued by this one, and I'll let you know if when I read it. If you have read this, let me know what you think about it. Absolutely, check it out. This is cool. This is pretty unusual, but really interesting for me. We have a series of interconnected short stories. We'll say novellas. They're all 100 to 200 pages. We have trees out. There are A Dark Genesis, Erebus, and Ghost of Times, all by author Cheryl Lawson. The basic idea is that we follow crews of different generational ships traveling to distant planets and colonies. It looks like the most of the travel, almost 100 years, they went pretty smoothly, but each ship starts to experience something really disruptive. For example, we have in the first novella, A Dark Genesis, they get struck and infected by some kind of crystalline entity that invades the ship. The second one, Erebus, is about a AI gone rogue that probably wants to destroy the whole crew. And then we have Ghost in Time, when we have strange things happening in the minds of the crew, and an apparition and things that they actually cannot explain. And I'm really curious because I want to see how these stories are actually interconnected. Because the ships they have similar names. We have Vega 2, Vega 4, Vega 6, and I really want to see how and if these stories actually are interwoven, if the crews and members of or travelers on those ships, if they are communicating with each other, if they're actually working together to try and win the various situation, or if there is isolated. Are they traveling toward the same system? Are they going to try and colonize the same planets? What's going on? Are they set in the same time period, or are they subsequential? I don't think we have a specific reading order for this one. If the author is watching this video, please explain and tell us more in the comments down below. But yeah, I'm really curious. I want to see how it works, and especially the fact that the novels are so short. This can be really effective for me because I tend to read really long books and series, maybe a little bit to the detriment of my enjoying of my actual TBRs. I am starting to incorporate a little bit more of novellas and short stories in my TBRs because I'm realizing that, given how much my reading journey is changing during the last year, I better learn to enjoy more of short stories because they help me to, they work as a palate cleanser, but they're actually a little bit less daunting of an effort to get to the ending. And I think that science fiction especially is a genre that lends itself very well to this kind of stories. Because, with epic fantasy and high fantasy, you basically need for a novel to be pretty lengthy to justify its world building and the huge cast of characters. So you usually need a very respectable amount of page count. But with science fiction stories that are basically they revolve around a just idea, to a high concept pitch. It is easier to give you a satisfying end when that pitch, that high concept, get resolved, and you can make it pretty much shorter and effective. So let's see if it goes. If you have read this, because this has been out for quite a minute, I think that the first one was published in 2021. If you know anything about this series, please let me know. Let's talk about it. Absolutely, pretty soon. Okay, we have something pretty unique here, and it is The Moon Could Only Weep by Rara Hope. This is an epic fantasy, high fantasy story with multiple POVs. We have a survivor to a shipwreck that has to understand what's going on with this shipwreck, what actually happened. It doesn't seem to be an accident, and he has to deal with a sentient book with blank pages. What's going on there? That's interesting. Then we have an exiled monster hunter that is turned librarian. And I think that grants an epic prequel story just for that. How do you go from that kind of lifestyle to a completely different lifestyle? Especially like this one, that he's been hunted by dreams and he lost his memories too. And has this is challenging his intimacy with death. There's a lot there just in that short sentence to describe that character. So we have a monster hunter turned librarian. He's lost his memories, and what does it mean, intimacy with death? It is about the job that he did, because how he graciously dealt and gave up death as a gift to those monsters. I don't know. I want to know. And then we have actually the bad girl, the actual bad guy. It's not a guy, it's a woman here that has been imprisoned for 900 years and stripped of her free will. And she actually wants to burn the world because of that. And that's interesting for me. So we have this unlikely pair of heroes, the girl and the guy, that they have to understand what happened with the shipwreck and with the book with blank pages. I think they're connected because he's a librarian. That's interesting. And we have this really troubled, evil villainess that wants to avenge herself for what she went through during the last 900 years when she was imprisoned. So yeah, that's really interesting. This is a very interesting way to kickstart the stories, because we have interesting backgrounds and interesting questions there, as I told you. So yeah, I want to know what happens. If you have read this, let me know what you think about it, and I'll let you know as soon as I read it. We all love a good heist story, right? And we have what seems to be a really good one by author Greta Kelly, and the title is The Queen of Days, which is also looks like it's a standalone, which is pretty rare, but also pretty welcome. It is difficult to wrap up a high fantasy story in a single volume, but I'm willing to give it a try, and it looks like it's pretty short too. We are around less than 400 pages, let's say. Okay, so this is really interesting. We have the protagonist, which is called Balthazar. He comes from a family of thieves, and he's been tasked with stealing a statue during a celebration to a god in the world that we see when the current setting of the story is evolving. But what happens is that there's a conflict there, there's a micro conflict there, because in the crew that he is part of, there is a new member that is called Queen of Days that has to join the crew, that she's mentioned as the weapon of last resort. What's going on there? The description is purposefully vague about this, because it says whatever that means about the weapon of last resort. But the fact is that the heist goes kind of well, because he looks like he gets the statue, but it also, in the process of getting the statue, he rips open a portal that connects the city to the god. So he thought that celebration for the god was something like meaningful, a meaningless celebration, because it doesn't believe in those gods. But it actually looks that those gods are pretty real, and something really catastrophic happens, and he has to use that statue to try and save the world, but in the process he could destroy the city. What is going on here? It is really intriguing, because as I told you, I love a good heist story. This has been in a way compared to a little bit to Six of Crows and The Lies of Locke Lamora. So yeah, let's give it a try. If you have read this, let me know. I will let you know what I think about it as soon as I finish reading it. Also, shout out to author L.L. MacRae, because her upcoming novel is the third one in a trilogy that starts with the Iron Crown, the second one is the Shadow Gate, and the third one is the Broken Sword. This is pretty original, because it's about a young guy that has lost his memory, but it is kind of haunted by dragons, but dragons here, especially in the first volume, as far as I can tell, because I begrudgingly have to admit that I still didn't have read the first book, even if everybody says that this is basically epic fantasy perfection, that it is so good and so well developed with a really interesting world building and great characters. I know I would punch myself because I'm so slow, but I want to do it. And it says that here the dragon are incorporeal entities, okay? So they influences the world, but they have a strange position in the world building that is really different from what we usually see. And in the first book we have also another characters that it's called Calidra, that has this strange relationship with her mother, the strange conflict, and she begrudgingly accepts to help the protagonist to reacquire his lost memory, and also to deal with this strange kind of dragons that we have in the story. But we also have the ancient evil resurfacing and we know how that perfectly works in epic fantasy story usually. So yeah, I can't believe that we are also at the end of the series and I still haven't read the first one, but I'll absolutely do it. Yeah, I will absolutely give it a try. If you have read the first volume, which is so very much beloved, let me know what you think about it, and I'll let you know what I think about it as soon as I finish reading it. I just finished reading Heliotrope by Pickering, and it was an incredible experience. A really long book, and it took me months to read it, because I was reading this, and then reading Curse of the Mistwrights, and then reading Ships of Merior, and reading a bunch of other books that I had to review. So I couldn't read this book alone. Had I been able to read just this one, I would have finished it in a couple of weeks. And I know that for many people that's incredible, but that's the way I read, because I'm that slow. So the basics of it is that we have a don't know the American word. So we have this war veteran that now he's a stonemason, maybe? That's the word? I don't know. Stonemaker, because he does mosaics and he does not exactly sculptures, I'll say, but he builds things with stone, okay? For example, during the course of the novel, he repairs he builds from zero, from scratch, a beautiful mosaic on a balcony for a queen, for example, and then he fixes and rebuilds the paving for a training field when young people, young guys and girls, they get trained to become warriors, that has specific tesserae and decorations there. And the name of the novel actually is around there. We have these artifacts that are called heliotropes. They are basically these huge pavings that have decoration with different kind of stone arranged to represent the figures, and they have incredible power. If you train there, they say dance with the sword on those heliotropes, you'll see them moving, because they affect your brain. If you come from a specific bloodline that's able to use the power of those heliotropes, and those mechanics of how do you learn to use the power of the heliotropes are a huge part of how the characters develop and how the story develops. They work better in a specific time of the year, and they have to be positioned in specific place to have sunlight in a specific way that ignites their power in a much more different and much more powerful way. So that's hugely entertaining and fascinating. I have never seen anything like this. Anything like this made it so fascinating because you actually understand why that guy, after he has lost most of his past, let's say that he does a pretty quiet life, but you can see that he is troubled because he went through some really traumatic events that reshaped his vision of the world, but they didn't he doesn't have cracks in his morality, and that makes it so interesting because he has this really strong idea and ideals about what's good and right, and he's made of stone about those. When he thinks that something is when he sees wrongdoings and he thinks that it is a moment for him to act, he acts, and he is incredibly strong, and he does it. He means business. He doesn't fool around. And the protagonist is named Talio. So he's a stone mason, let's say. So he does this, but he's a war veteran. So he went through a really traumatic bunch of years when he lost his wife and his children. And he has this huge gap, this huge hole in his chest, because actually his son, went missing during the war. He was kidnapped by an adjacent kingdom, and he doesn't know if he's still alive. And he searched for him for many years, but he never was able to find him. And this is just the basic setting, okay? Just the broad stroke at the beginning of the story, because the story actually starts, and this is not a spoiler, you have it on the back of the book, when the princess gets kidnapped. And he has this strange, really cute relationship with this teenage girl, because during the first bunch of chapters, the girl basically spies on him while he's working on the decoration of the balcony, and he knows that she's there, but he doesn't tell her that he knows. And I don't want to spoil it, the mechanics of how they become friends, but the way they establish a relationship is so sweet and so deep, and how he managed to know her so well, just based on those really sparse and really small interaction that are not even face to face. It makes you understand how deep of a character and how empathetic of a man he is. And I like that, because even if he went through those incredibly traumatic events, and even if he's lost so much, he's still a good man, and he still has this clear vision of how much he can influence the world around him. So he doesn't allow pain and what happened to him in the past to shape his present in a completely negative way. And that's incredible, because he's so resilient and he's so capable. And then the actual journey begins, and because he's involved in what happened in a positive way, when outsiders enter the palace, the royal palace, and they wreak havoc around, he's there while it's happening, and he fights, and he gets involved, and he establishes much more of a relationship with her. But also this guy has a knack to adopt orphans, because he also, just at the beginning of the story, he adopts another young guy, a boy that was bullied and abused. And you see that in this kingdom you have exactly how he lost his son because he was kidnapped during the war, and he thinks that he lives outside in an adjacent kingdom. In his kingdom, his own kingdom, you have young boys and girls that have been kidnapped from other kingdoms during the world, and they're used as slaves in the world when he lives. Especially this one, the way he finds the boy, and the way he decides, yes, I'm taking care of this boy, I'm taking it with me. It's so heartwarming, because I think that it works so much, it works so well for me, because I think we lack positive masculine figures in epic fantasy and in high fantasy today. Because the tendency has become to make our character grayer and grayer, and to strip them of the idealistic attributes that usually epic fantasy have. And I can understand why, and I can understand how making them more and more flawed makes them interesting and more relatable. But I also think that we're actually going through a downslope when all of our characters or all of our protagonists are incredibly bad people. They're horrible people in most of the novel, in the epic fantasy novel that we have. They're unlikable, they are foul-mouthed, they have bad relationship with each other, they're bitter, they're people that I would actually not want to spend my time with. So why would I want to spend my time in a novel with them? Okay? And I'm not saying that this character is perfect, but absolutely no. He has glaring flaws, and he messes up a lot, and he makes huge mistakes during the story. But he doesn't shy away from his idea of justice. And his idea of justice is not tainted by greed or by desire of power or other wish fulfillment that we can have in modern stories, when this idea of what's good and bad is pretty much tainted by the world when we live in, when it looks like there's no good and there's no evil, and we have to accept everything. And I really love it. I really love it because he is, and the novel is described as a heroic fantasy too, and I can see why, because Taleo, it is certainly a hero. He's really capable, but it's also really empathetic. He's strong-minded, but he has problems. He has character flaws, but still he is a positive figure. That's a friend you want to have. That's a father you want to have. That's a lover you want to have. It's an incredibly well-rounded character that goes on an arc. And what happens in the last bunch of chapters is actually show you really clearly what his character flaws are and how he deals with those. And how he admits his flaws. Finally, when he has a couple of conversations at the end of the books, they resonate so hard. Because you cannot, you need to cheer with him because of the way he's been written. Palmer Pickering, she's a great author because she actually delivered a character that has an evolution, but he refrains from that tendency that we have today to destroy the fundamentals of every characters in every novel. And in every 200 pages we destroy them and we rebuild them and we put them always in the same cycle of things, and we put them always facing and refacing the same problem. I'm talking about you, Brandon Sanderson. Talking about you, Kaladin. I'm sorry, I love you, but 5 books, always the same story. And I know that that's life, okay? We go on those patterns. We do always the same exact. I understand that. But in the frame of epic fantasy stories, sometimes it is refreshing to see a character arc that it is mostly internal and that it gets resolved in a subtle way at the end of the story. Because he is capable, we don't have the usual coming of age story, because Taleo is very much a mature man and he is as capable as he can be at the beginning of the story, and he becomes much more capable because he understands how those heliotropes work. But he was a formidable human being and an incredible fighter even before that, okay, no question asked. But his internal struggle gets resolved in such a satisfying way at the end of the story. And that's just talking about him, because if he starts talking about all the other characters, his cousin, Dinsmora, that he calls Mora, and the two teenagers that he has with him during the story, the princess, Kasperi, and the guy, and the orphan guy, Jessam, and the way they all interact and their relationship as a found family. And the animals, we have the horses here that have specific characterization, and the ships, we have a bunch of ships that they have to travel with and that they have to save. And I was on the edge of my seat because I was afraid that those ships they were going to die, and I was almost crying when I was afraid that those ships they were going to die unceremoniously during the trip. This was incredible. This was done so well. Yeah, I love this. This is a real serious contender to the crown of Book of the Year from Abel Montero, which nobody cares. But I care, and I love this so much. I will say that the only downside is that the book is really long, and maybe the second part is a little bit... this is generally a slow-paced book, okay? But and I'm okay with that. I love that. I love slow burn. I love character development more than the plot. But it looks like the middle part of the book, it has a little too much of meandering things. And basically the whole book has many chapters that are devoted to the day-to-day life that they do during the travel, and how they actually try to survive, what they buy, what they have to eat, when they have to rest, where to find a shelter to sleep. And you get acquainted with that pretty fast. But that middle section is a little bit rough. And also the language, sometimes it gets really repetitive. You have paragraphs when the name of the protagonist gets repeated many ways, like Taleo does this, then Taleo does that, and then Taleo does that. And it's a little bit grating sometimes, but it is much more apparent. And you know why? At the beginning of the story, I don't think we have that much during the second part and at the third part. I think that actually the writing style, the actually putting words after words of the craftsmanship of the writing gets better and better. I think this could have easily been a trilogy, but it is actually a really long book, and that I thoroughly enjoyed. I loved it so much. It is easily a 5-star. Probably one of the best things that I've read during this year, and I love it. And I'm so sad because this is a standalone. I know that Palmer is open to writing more stories in this novel because we have a good wrap-up of almost everything that was set up at the beginning. We have 2 specific threads that I cannot spoil that kind of get resolved, but you can understand there's much more there. So you have this idea that the story is satisfying, but I can actually see this as a setup to a huge epic fantasy story, an epic fantasy series that goes along at least as a trilogy. The problem is that, of course, Palmer Pickering is an independently published author, and it is really difficult to sell books. So I can understand if she decides that this is enough and if she tries to focus on selling this one before to decide that she has to embark on such a huge story, because this must be longer than 200k words. This is a huge undertaking. Okay, this is a huge effort to pull it off, to write it, to edit, to market it, and to push it out. Easily thousands of dollars in production for an independently published author, and to try to recoup all of those expenses and then to make a profit, and then to make it viable to keep doing that, it's not easy, I'm telling you. So I'm not holding my breath for another novel in this series. I know how difficult it will be to publish another book so long and so ambitious as like this one in a series. And I know that Palmer is focusing on another series too. She is publishing Lit RPG stories. I reviewed the first one, which is one of my favorite, which is called of a couple of years ago. It was called Dark Town. I had the pleasure to beta rate the second book in the series, which is called The Swamp. It will be released during the summer, I think. So I will have things written by Palmer Pickering. So I will have material produced by her. But this one I loved more than anything else that she has written. And even if I will not have pretty soon, in the foreseeable future, a continuation of this story, I am satisfied with this one. And if you haven't read this, do yourself a favor. Go and check it out. This is incredible. This is so good. It has really good characters and incredible world building, interesting mechanics, incredible action because Taleo is such an incredible fighter. And yeah, the ending is incredible, it's heart-wrenching, it's very good, very satisfying. It's a huge tome, it has an amazing cover. If you want to have it in your library, if it makes you proud because you possess it in your library, just let me show it to you. Can you see it? It's a big boy. It's a chunker. It has a glossy cover, but it is even glossier because I wrapped it in mylar. And see all the tabs that I have here. There are dozens of quotable sentences here and moments that make me weep, that galvanize me, that make me excited, that make me scared. And yeah, this is an experience. This was so satisfying and so fun and so deep and so incredible. So give it a try. If you have read this, let me know. Yeah, do yourself a favor. Go and check it out and follow Palmer Pickering. Writing updates. As I told you, I think in my last video, the second book of the Memories of Kenji series was already written because this was actually published a couple of years ago in Italian. I'm going through revisions because I could change a few things. I could swap one character. This one, the second book in the Memories of Kenji series, and actually next month there will be a title reveal for the second book. This has 6 point of views, while the first book had 3 with an additional couple of chapters with the point of view of the villain. But in the second book we have actually the point of view in many chapters from the villain, so they make 4, and then we have another chapter another point of view of a character that you met in the first book that becomes much more relevant in the second one. And we had another one in the Italian edition that I added specifically for that novel that I think I will cancel and I will add another one, which could easily take me a month or so, or maybe 2, to integrate those point of view, because what this character goes through is briefly mentioned in the Italian edition, but maybe I should put him on the forefront. That means that I have to write around 40,000 words more, or maybe 50,000 words more, and I will decide if I'm going to change that much of the structure of the story, and because I have to decide when to release that book, okay? The second book is already translated, so there is not much to do on the basics production of the story aside the editing and proofreading before to decide when to release it. But if I go through this really important shift in the point of view balance in the story, it will take me a little bit of time, but I am not in any rush, because here starts the really difficult part of marketing and selling the book, because you have the hype with the pre-orders, and then you have the hype of the release, but then real life hits, because you have to keep the momentum going and in the interest high, and you have to try to sell organically the books to all the persons and readers that never knew you and never knew anything about the book. That's the really hard part. I will say that I'm incredibly grateful, because as I told you at the beginning of the video, I'm incredibly satisfied. In 2 weeks I have sold more than 300 copies, and we are around 3,000, almost 4,000 pages read on Kindle Unlimited. If you don't know what Kindle Unlimited is a subscription service from Amazon. When you pay a monthly fee, and then you have a catalog, a book of books that you can read. And given the fact that the books are included in the subscription service, I don't get paid by copies, I get paid by pages read. And I see that we have thousands of pages read, so people are actually reading the book and enjoying it. Reviews are generally pretty good. We have around 4.3.5 on a median of average on Goodreads, and I think I have almost 40 reviews by now, and almost 10 on Amazon too. So yeah, this is going really well for me, even better than I anticipated. And if you have read the book, please please try to leave a review, and if you haven't, check it out. Go and check out the link in the description down below and let me know what you think about it. The book I will keep the book at 99 cents for the foreseeable future, at least for another couple of weeks, maybe a month, and then I will bring it up to a reasonable price. Okay, but you also have paperbacks and hardcovers like that one. Yeah, thank you so much for your support, and I think this is all I've got for you today. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this very long video. Remember that if you're interested in science fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. And if you want to see more videos like this, you have more videos like this right here, right now. Please consider subscribing, leave a like, share this video, and I'll see you in the next one.